My life was falling apart because of a damn toothache. Austin Clark, 27, a freelance graphic designer who works from home, had been avoiding dentists for 3 years, like a vampire running from garlic. The pain started on a Tuesday at 3 in the morning, right in the middle of an urgent project for a major client. It felt like someone was hammering red-hot nails directly into my right jaw. I tried everything: painkillers, ice packs, even weird home remedies I found on Google. Nothing worked. The pain was so intense it made me break out in a cold sweat, and my hands would shake when I tried to use my mouse. My design started looking crooked. The colors were all wrong, and I saved files with completely random names because I couldn't think straight. If you also have a phobia that's stopping you from living life to the fullest, hit the like button and subscribe to find out how I turned my biggest fear into my greatest blessing. The truth is, my dental phobia started when I was 15. A cruel dentist held me down with excessive force while pulling a tooth without enough anesthesia. Ever since then, just thinking about sitting in that torture chair would make my stomach turn and my legs go weak. That's why I spent 3 years avoiding mirrors that showed my smile and always chewing on the left side. My apartment in downtown Portland became my safe fortress. 3 gigantic monitors dominated my desk, surrounded by piles of sketches and graphic designs scattered everywhere. The smell of instant coffee mixed with the aroma of the daily takeout I ordered: pizza, Chinese food, burgers, anything that didn't require vigorous chewing. What you're hearing here is just the beginning. The full stories, unfiltered and with all the details you can imagine, are available now. Check the link in the description right now. My routine was mathematically precise. I'd wake up around 11 in the morning, have 2 large cups of black coffee to fully wake up, check emails from clients complaining about deadlines, and dive into the digital world until 4 in the morning. The only sounds were the constant hum of the computers, the distant noise of traffic down below, and occasionally my own voice during video conferences with clients. Portland was pulsing with life outside, but I had built a perfectly controlled bubble where nothing could hurt me, especially dentists. My social contacts were limited to sporadic text messages with a few college friends and professional conversations on video calls. It was a lonely but safe existence. On Wednesday, after 48 hours of pure agony, I realized I was defeated. The pain had become a monster that devoured every thought, every movement. I couldn't work, couldn't eat, couldn't even drink cold water without feeling electric stabs running through my jaw. With trembling hands, I opened Google and typed "Emergency Dentist Portland." Several options popped up, but one caught my eye: Perfect Smile Dental Clinic. The Spanish name sounded welcoming, and the website showed a modern environment with soft colors and green plants scattered everywhere. Nothing like the sinister offices of my nightmares. I took 3 deep breaths before dialing. My voice came out raspy and desperate when I explained my situation to the receptionist. She was extremely kind, asking about my phobia and assuring me that Dr. Cameron Torres was an expert with anxious patients. She scheduled me for the same day, at 2 in the afternoon. The drive to the clinic was psychological torture. Every block made me want to turn the car around and race back home. My shirt was soaked with nervous sweat, and I mentally rehearsed excuses to cancel everything at the last minute. But the throbbing pain reminded me that I had no choice. The Perfect Smile Dental Clinic was in a modern glass and steel building, very different from the old, gloomy buildings I had imagined. The lobby had white marble floors, glass walls, and a small fountain that made a relaxing sound of running water. Soft instrumental music played in the background, and the air smelled of lavender mixed with something citrusy. My fingers trembled as I filled out the medical form. In the anxieties or phobias field, I wrote in all caps, "Extreme dental phobia." The receptionist, a gray-haired Latina woman, offered me chamomile tea and magazines, but I was too busy trying to control my breathing to accept anything. The waiting room had comfortable beige leather armchairs, colorful abstract paintings on the walls, and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. Other patients seemed relaxed, some even smiling as they chatted quietly. This made me even more nervous. How could these people be so calm in a place like this? 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours passed until I heard my name being called. A young, smiling assistant guided me down a lit corridor to a room that looked more like a spa than a dental office. The walls were painted in soft shades of blue and green. There were natural plants in the corners, and the dental equipment was all white and modern, without that menacing look of old offices. That's when he walked into the room, and my world just stopped. Dr. Cameron Torres looked nothing like the dentists in my nightmares. He was around 32, average height, with perfectly styled wavy black hair, and brown eyes so warm that they immediately made me feel less tense. His dark skin had a natural tan, and when he smiled, he revealed perfect white teeth that looked like a toothpaste ad. He wore an impeccably clean white lab coat over a light blue shirt that highlighted his eyes. His hands were elegant, with long fingers and neatly trimmed nails. When he spoke, his voice had a soft Mexican accent that added an irresistible charm to every word. "Hello, Austin. I'm Dr. Cameron Torres, but you can just call me Cameron," he said, extending his hand to shake mine. His grip was firm but gentle, and his hands were surprisingly soft. "I read on your form that you have a dental phobia. I want you to know that we're going to work together to make this experience as comfortable as possible." Instead of telling me to sit in the chair right away, Cameron pulled a regular chair and sat next to me, staying at my eye level. He asked about my job, showing genuine interest when I explained about graphic design. We discovered that he photographed landscapes in his spare time, a passion he developed during his trips through Mexico before moving to the United States. "Photography and graphic design have a lot in common," Cameron said, pulling his cell phone out of his pocket. "Both work with composition, colors, light, and shadow to tell stories." He showed me some of his photos: stunning landscapes of Mexican beaches, mist-covered mountains, and colorful colonial towns with vibrant architecture. We talked for 20 minutes about composition techniques, the rule of thirds, and color theory. Cameron had an impressive knowledge of visual art, and our conversation flowed naturally, as if we were old friends. Gradually, my tension began to ease. For the first time in years, I was talking to a dentist without feeling the urge to run. "I'm going to be completely honest with you," Cameron said, leaning forward slightly. "I noticed your anxiety the moment I came in here. Before we examine your tooth, how about you get familiar with the environment and the instruments? We won't do anything you're not ready for." Cameron offered me a glass of room-temperature water and patiently explained each dental instrument, letting me hold and examine everything. The dental mirror was small and light. The Explorer probe had a tiny tip, and even the drill seemed less threatening when he demonstrated how it worked in the air, away from my mouth. "Back in my hometown of Puebla, my grandfather was a traditional healer," Cameron told me as he organized his instruments. "He always said that true healing begins with trust between people. Medical technique is important, but human connection is essential." He asked about my traumatic experience at 15, listening carefully without judgment as I recounted every painful detail. His eyes showed genuine compassion, and he shared his own vulnerability. He had lost a patient in Mexico due to unexpected complications, and it had almost made him quit dentistry completely. "I came to the United States to start over and rediscover my passion for helping people," Cameron admitted. "Some days I still question if I chose the right profession. We all carry scars, Austin. The difference is how we choose to deal with them." His honesty touched me deeply. Here was a successful professional admitting his own insecurities, treating me as an equal instead of just another problematic patient. I felt a connection forming between us, something that went beyond the traditional doctor-patient relationship. As we talked, I noticed small details about Cameron that caught my attention. The way he gestured gently with his hands when he explained something, how his eyes lit up when he talked about photography, and how his smile reached his eyes in a genuine way. There was something magnetic about him that made me want to continue our conversation for hours. But the throbbing pain in my right tooth kept reminding me of reality. Every few minutes, a sharp jolt would shoot through my jaw, making me involuntarily wince. Cameron noticed my discomfort and suggested a quick look at the affected area to assess the urgency of the treatment. "I promise I'll only look today," Cameron said. "No instruments, no procedures. Just a visual assessment so we know what we're dealing with. If you feel any discomfort, just raise your hand and we'll stop immediately." My mind began an internal war. Voices from the past screamed at me to run, reminding me of the pain and humiliation of that experience at 15. But a new voice, weaker but persistent, whispered that Cameron was different, that I needed the treatment, and that maybe it was time to face this paralyzing fear. Cameron noticed my hesitation and didn't pressure me. Instead, he talked about unconventional techniques he had learned from Mexican healers, deep relaxation methods that combined ancient traditions with modern dentistry. He explained how emotional trauma manifests physically, creating muscle tension that intensifies pain and fear. "I have a proposal," Cameron said, his eyes meeting mine directly. "How about we try a different approach? Relaxation techniques my grandfather taught me, combined with modern dental care. It's unorthodox, but it has worked wonderfully with anxious patients." Part of me wanted to know more about these mysterious techniques, while another part screamed that this was just another excuse to torture me. Cameron waited patiently for my response, without hurry or pressure, allowing me to internally process this crucial decision. The pain pulsed again, more intense than before, reminding me that postponing treatment wouldn't make the problem go away. I looked at Cameron, his warm eyes, his relaxed posture, his infinite patience, and something inside me decided to trust him. "Okay," I whispered, my voice coming out raspier than expected. "Let's try your unconventional techniques." Cameron smiled softly and stood up to adjust the room's lighting. He dimmed the main lights to create a cozier atmosphere, then lit 2 small lavender candles that were on a side shelf. The aroma began to fill the room, creating a completely different sensation from any dental office I had ever imagined. "First, we'll work on the tension built up in your body," Cameron explained, returning to the chair where I was still sitting normally. "Emotional trauma manifests physically, especially in the neck, shoulders, and jaw muscles. You need to release this tension before any procedure." He asked me to close my eyes and breathe deeply through my nose, holding the air for 4 seconds before slowly exhaling through my mouth. His voice became even softer, almost hypnotic, as he guided me through breathing exercises he had learned from his family's traditional healers. "Now I'm going to touch some tense areas," Cameron warned. "If anything bothers you, just let me know." I felt his hands position themselves gently on my temples, his fingers making extremely delicate circular movements. The pressure was perfect, firm enough to be effective, but gentle enough not to cause discomfort. Waves of relaxation began to spread through my head, dissolving tensions I didn't even know existed. Cameron worked methodically, his hands gliding to massage the area behind my ears, then moving down to my neck. His fingers found specific points where muscles had been contracted for years, applying therapeutic pressure that sent small tremors of relief through my body. "It's incredible how much tension you're carrying here," Cameron murmured, his fingers working a particularly stubborn knot at the base of my neck. His breath was close enough for me to feel the warmth against my skin, creating a strangely intimate sensation I hadn't expected in a dental office. Cameron's hands were surprisingly skilled, navigating each tense muscle as if he knew my body better than I did. When he touched an especially sensitive area between my neck and shoulder, a low groan escaped my lips before I could control it. Cameron paused for a moment, and I could feel his eyes on me. "Sorry," I mumbled, opening my eyes and finding his face leaning over mine, our faces separated by just a few inches. "You don't need to apologize," Cameron replied, his voice coming out raspier than before. "It means the technique is working. Your body is finally releasing old tensions." There was something different in his eyes now, an intensity that hadn't been there before. The professional environment had transformed into something more personal, more intimate. The candles created dancing shadows on the walls, and the aroma of lavender mixed with Cameron's subtle cologne created an almost sensual atmosphere. Cameron resumed the massage, but now his movements seemed more deliberate, more exploratory. His hands slid down my shoulders, fingers finding tense areas under my shirt. When he suggested I take off my shirt for a more effective treatment, my heart raced, but not with fear. Is this normal?" I asked, my voice coming out as a whisper. "Every patient is unique," Cameron replied, his eyes fixed on mine. "I only do what I consider necessary for complete well-being." I removed my shirt with slightly trembling hands, feeling vulnerable but strangely aroused. Cameron positioned his hands directly on my bare skin, and the electric contact I felt was completely unexpected. His fingers were warm and incredibly soft, gliding over the muscles of my back with movements that seemed to map unexplored territories. "You have a lot of built-up tension here," Cameron said, his hands working deeply into the muscles between my shoulder blades. The pressure was intense, almost painful, but in a way that created pleasure instead of discomfort. Each movement of his fingers sent waves of sensation through my body, making me involuntarily arch under his touch. Cameron worked in silence for a few minutes, his breathing getting slightly heavier as he concentrated on particularly tense areas. Occasionally, he would murmur words in Spanish that I couldn't understand, but the tone was affectionate, almost intimate. When his hands slid to my front shoulders, lightly brushing my chest, I felt my breathing quicken. Cameron noticed my reaction and paused, his eyes meeting mine again. "Austin," he said softly, "I need you to know that this isn't standard protocol." "I know," I replied, my voice coming out raspier than I intended. "And you also need to know that I've never felt such a strong attraction to a patient," Cameron confessed, his hands still resting on my shoulders. "From the moment I walked into this room, Something about you caught my attention in a way that goes far beyond professional. My heart was beating so fast I was sure he could hear it. Cameron's raw honesty disarmed me completely. Here was this handsome, competent, and charismatic man confessing that he felt the same magnetic attraction that had hit me since I first saw him. I feel it too, I finally admitted. I never thought I could feel so safe and at the same time so excited in a dental office. Cameron smiled, an expression that lit up his entire face. His hand slid gently from my shoulders to my neck, his thumb tracing a delicate line along my jawline. The intimacy of the moment was palpable, charged with a sexual tension that neither of us was trying to hide anymore. "May I?" Cameron asked, leaning in even closer. I couldn't respond with words, just gave a slight nod. Cameron closed the distance between us, his lips meeting mine in a kiss that was soft at first, almost hesitant, then deepened as he realized I was responding with equal intensity. The kiss was electric, charged with all the tension that had built up during our conversation. His hands moved to my hair, fingers tangling as we kissed with growing passion. I could taste the minty flavor of his mouth, the warmth of his tongue exploring mine, the way he moaned softly against my lips. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. Cameron rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed as if trying to process what had just happened. "This changes everything," Cameron murmured. "I know," I replied, my hands automatically finding his face, my thumb tracing his cheek. "And I don't care." Cameron smiled and pulled back slightly, his hands still on my neck. "We still need to treat your tooth," he said, a note of amusement in his voice. "Honestly," I replied, "the pain has almost completely disappeared." It was true. Between the massage, the relaxation, and the adrenaline from the kiss, my toothache had been reduced to a dull, manageable ache. Cameron laughed softly, shaking his head in amusement. "My grandfather's techniques really do work," he said. "But even so, I need to do at least a basic exam to make sure there's no serious infection." This time, I didn't feel scared when Cameron suggested I lean back in the dental chair. The environment had changed completely. It was no longer a place of potential torture, but a space where something beautiful and unexpected had happened. Cameron adjusted the chair carefully, explaining each movement before he made it. When he asked me to open my mouth, his words echoed in a completely different way than I had expected when I arrived. "Open up for me," he said softly. But this time, the words carried an intimacy that transcended any medical procedure. I opened my mouth without hesitation, trusting this man who had transformed my greatest source of terror into something close to pleasure. Cameron worked with extreme care, his hands gentle and precise as he examined the problematic tooth. "Significant inflammation, but it's treatable," Cameron diagnosed after a few minutes. "I'll prescribe antibiotics to reduce the infection, and we can schedule the definitive treatment for next week, when you're more comfortable." I felt a pang of disappointment at the thought that our session was coming to an end. Cameron noticed my expression and smiled knowingly. "Unless," he said, helping me sit up in the chair, "you want to continue our conversation in a less clinical setting. I know a small Mexican restaurant nearby that serves the best home-cooked food in the city." My heart leaped. "Are you asking me out to dinner?" "I am," Cameron confirmed, a lovely vulnerability showing in his previous confidence. "If you want to, of course. I know this is completely unconventional, but—" "Yes," I interrupted before he could finish. "Definitely yes." Cameron smiled, that radiant smile that had captivated me from the very first moment. As I put my shirt back on, he wrote down the antibiotic prescription and gave me a card with his personal number. "For emergencies," he explained with a mischievous smile. "Dental or otherwise." When I left the clinic that afternoon, my life had changed in ways I never could have imagined. The toothache that had brought me there in desperation had become secondary compared to the deep connection I had developed with Cameron. My dental phobia, which had terrified me for years, had been replaced by a completely new and positive association. For the first time in 3 years, I was looking forward to going back to the dentist. The restaurant Cameron chose was a small family-owned place called Casa de la Abuela, hidden on a side street in Portland's Hispanic neighborhood. The walls were decorated with colorful tiles and black and white photos of Mexican families, while soft mariachi music played in the background. The aroma of spices and fresh tortillas filled the air, creating a cozy atmosphere that made me feel immediately comfortable. Cameron had changed out of his lab coat into a casual navy blue shirt that made his dark eyes stand out even more. When he arrived at the restaurant, he found me already nervously flipping through the menu, mentally trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. Seeing Cameron outside the clinical setting made him even more attractive, if that was possible. "I recommend the carnitas tacos," Cameron said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Dona Rosa makes them exactly like my grandmother did in Puebla." Over the next 2 hours, we talked about absolutely everything. Cameron told me about his childhood in Mexico, growing up in a family of traditional healers who mixed ancestral medicine with modern techniques. His grandfather had been a legendary figure in the region, known for healing not only physical problems, but also deep emotional traumas, through techniques that conventional medicine was only just beginning to understand. "That's why I came to the United States," Cameron explained, carefully cutting his enchilada. "I wanted to combine these family traditions with modern dental technology. I believe that true healing happens when we treat the whole person, not just the symptoms." I shared my own story. Years working in isolation in my apartment, avoiding deep social contact, building a carefully controlled life where nothing could hurt me. Cameron listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that showed genuine interest in my perspective. "You know what impresses me the most?" Cameron said, resting his elbows on the table and leaning forward slightly. "Your courage to face something today that has terrified you for years. That takes tremendous inner strength." I felt my face flush slightly. No one had ever called me courageous before. In fact, I had always considered myself a coward for avoiding dentists for so long. Cameron's perspective on my situation was completely new and unexpectedly liberating. When Cameron casually mentioned that he was considering moving back to Mexico because he missed his family and questioned whether he could build a fulfilling life in the United States, I felt a sudden pang of panic. The idea of losing him so soon after finding him seemed unbearable. "But," Cameron continued, his eyes meeting mine directly, "something happened today that completely changed my perspective. For the first time since I got here, I feel like there's a powerful reason to stay." My heart raced again. The intensity in his gaze left me speechless, and all I could do was smile shyly as I tried to process the implications of his words. After dinner, Cameron insisted on walking me back to my apartment. We walked slowly through the streets of Portland, our conversation flowing naturally as we explored this new dynamic between us. Occasionally, our hands would accidentally brush against each other, creating small sparks of electricity that made my stomach do flips. In front of my building, we stopped awkwardly, neither of us wanting the night to end. Cameron turned to face me, his hands finding my face with the same gentleness he had shown in the office. "Austin," he said softly, "I want you to know that today was special for me in ways that go far beyond professional. I don't usually connect with people so quickly, but with you, it was different from the very first moment." "Me too," I admitted, placing my hands over his. I never thought I could feel so safe with someone I just met. We kissed again right there on the sidewalk, a slower, more exploratory kiss than the one in the office. When we parted, Cameron smiled and handed me a small card with his personal number written on it. "For emergencies," he said with a mischievous smile, "dental or otherwise." I woke up the next morning with a completely new feeling. For the first time in years, I was looking forward to something that involved dental care. Cameron had scheduled my next appointment for the following week, and I genuinely couldn't wait to see him again. Over the next few months, our appointments became regular dates that went far beyond dental treatment. Cameron patiently worked to repair years of oral neglect, but each session was also an opportunity for us to get to know each other more deeply. We discovered surprising compatibilities. We were both introverts who appreciated quiet nights at home. We both had a passion for visual art, and we both valued authenticity over social superficiality. Cameron introduced me to authentic Mexican cuisine, while I helped him navigate American cultural quirks that still confused him. 3 months after our first meeting, Cameron suggested I move into his apartment. It was bigger than mine, with a spacious kitchen where he loved to cook, and a perfect office where I could work without urban distractions. "It would be more convenient," Cameron said with feigned innocence, "for emergency appointments." The move was surprisingly easy. Cameron helped me transport my equipment and files, carefully setting up my new office while I organized our shared belongings. For the first time in years, my life didn't just revolve around lonely work, but included another person in a natural and organic way. Living together, we discovered domestic rhythms that worked perfectly. Cameron woke up early to run before work, making strong coffee that he left ready for when I woke up later. I cooked simple dinners while he recounted interesting cases from the day, and we spent nights working side by side, me on graphic projects, him studying advanced dental techniques. My transformation was complete. Not only had I overcome my dental phobia, but I had also become more sociable, confident, and open to new experiences. Cameron encouraged me to take on more challenging projects, and my career flourished in unexpected ways. Clients commented on my new creative energy and more positive attitude. 6 months passed like a dream. Our relationship deepened naturally, without rush or pressure. Cameron introduced me to Mexican friends he had met in Portland, while I finally reconnected with old college friends I had neglected during my years of isolation. 1 year after our first meeting, Cameron suggested a special, routine checkup. Arriving at the office, I noticed he had decorated the room with extra candles and fresh flowers. The same lavender scent filled the air, bringing back vivid memories of how it all began. "Make yourself comfortable," Cameron said with a mysterious smile. "Today, we have a very special procedure." I sat in the dental chair with complete ease, a transformation that still surprised me occasionally. Cameron adjusted the lighting and stood beside me, but instead of dental instruments, he pulled a small blue velvet box from the pocket of his lab coat. "Austin Clark," Cameron said, his voice trembling slightly with nervousness. "A year ago you walked into this office terrified by a toothache. Today I want you to open your mouth for a completely different reason." My heart completely stopped when I realized what was happening. Cameron opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant engagement ring, tied with a small piece of dental floss that made me laugh through the tears that began to form in my eyes. "Will you marry me?" Cameron asked, delicately positioning the ring next to my open mouth. "I promise this will be the only dental procedure for the rest of your life that will leave you smiling for days." I couldn't answer immediately, intense emotions completely taking over. There was the man who had transformed my greatest fear into my greatest source of joy, proposing marriage in the exact place where we met. The poetic irony of the situation, my mouth open, not in terror, but in surprise and happiness, touched me deeply. "Yes," I finally managed to whisper. "Definitely yes." Cameron slid the ring onto my finger with slightly trembling hands, then leaned in to kiss me as tears of happiness streamed down my face. The kiss tasted of a promising future and shared adventures ahead. Sitting in that dental chair, hugging the man who had taught me that vulnerability can be strength, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought me there. A simple toothache had turned into the most transformative experience of my life, proving that sometimes we need to open ourselves up completely, literally and metaphorically, to find our greatest happiness. My dental phobia had not only disappeared, but had been replaced by precious memories of this special place where I found true love. Cameron had taught me that facing our deepest fears can lead us to life's most unexpected blessings. What you're hearing here is just the beginning. The full stories, unfiltered and with all the details you can imagine, are available now. Check the link in the description right now. If this story touched your heart or sparked something in you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments what your biggest fear was that turned into a blessing. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next stories that can change your perspective on vulnerability and love. Sometimes the right person shows up exactly when we need them most, turning our greatest terrors into our greatest joys.